My name is Serena Hall, 38 years old. I don't remember exactly what my dad said when he walked into the kitchen that morning. I just remember the sound my daughter made when she looked up and saw him. This tiny inhale, sharp and strangled, like someone had pulled a thread tight inside her chest. He was wearing a bright red life vest over his t-shirt, tag still dangling from the strap, and swinging a jet ski keychain around his finger like it was a medal he'd won. My daughter sat at the kitchen table with a pencil in her hand, hunched over one of those college prep workbooks I'd found at Goodwill. The cover was bent, the pages soft from too many fingers, but she treated it like gold. She'd been filling out practice essays all week, underlining key words, circling phrases like personal resilience and adversity. She still believed college was possible. She still believed effort meant something. 3 weeks earlier, a wall of muddy water had taken everything we had. Not just the drywall and the floors and the ceiling, but everything that made our house a home. The hallway where I'd taped up her crooked kindergarten drawings. The couch where my husband used to stretch out with his guitar on Sunday afternoons. The one he left behind when cancer took him years ago. Gone. We didn't even have time to grab a change of clothes, let alone mementos. My daughter kept asking if the box of letters she'd written to her dad, letters she'd tucked into a shoebox under her bed, was still floating out there somewhere. I never answered. We stayed in a shelter the first night. Everything smelled like bleach and wet socks. Her sneakers squished with every step. She slept with her head in my lap on a cot that sagged toward the middle, and I lay there staring at the ceiling tiles, counting each one because it was easier than counting the things we'd lost. With nowhere else to go and no savings left to lift us into some motel, we moved in with my parents. At first, it felt like grace. A real bed for her, a door that locked, hot water that didn't run out after 2 minutes. My mother cooked a big dinner the first night and said, "Well, we'll just have to make this work for a little while. That's what families do." I wanted to believe her. By the end of the second weekend, the tone had changed. Little slips at first. A list on the counter titled Shared Responsibilities, Laundry, dishes, bathroom cleaning, meal prep. A note underneath in my mother's handwriting. We all pitch in here. That part was fine. Fair, even. I'd always believed in pulling my weight. Then came the lists of suggested grocery contributions. Items circled with a note that said, "You can get these with your paycheck this week, right?" I was working part-time at a diner that barely covered gas, toiletries, and my daughter's lunch money. I bought as much as I could. It was never enough. My mom sighed dramatically every time my daughter poured herself a glass of milk. Sighed when she opened the fridge. Sighed when she dared to have seconds. My dad started making comments about our long showers, about how the water bill wasn't cheap, about how electricity doesn't grow on trees. He said it like we were wasteful teenagers, not two people who had just watched their life get swept away. One night, as I walked past their bedroom on my way back from the bathroom, I heard them through the door. "We can't keep this up," my mother hissed. "They're freeloading." My father grunted assent. "They don't even say thank you," she added, which was a lie, and she knew it. I said thank you every day, sometimes twice. I stood there in the dark hallway in borrowed pajamas, holding my breath, feeling my dignity drip away like water from a leaky faucet. We stayed anyway, because we had nowhere else to go, because the shelter was worse, because I told myself it was temporary, that I could inhale her sighs and his barbs and their whispered criticisms for a few months if it meant getting my daughter back into a stable school routine and rebuilding, even from nothing. I had one anchor in my head, the college fund. $15,000 I'd tucked away for my daughter over 12 years. Birthdays where I skipped buying myself a cake to put another 100 into the account. Tax refunds that went straight into savings instead of into a treat-yourself weekend. Night shifts watching a neighbor's kids so I could slip an extra 50 in at the end of the month. Every dollar I didn't spend on food or rent, I channeled into that fund. It was my promise to her that no matter what else life stole, her future had a cushion, that when the time came, she wouldn't be starting from zero like I did. That morning, she sat at the table in one of my brother's old sweatshirts, hair pulled back in a messy bun, chewing the end of her pencil as she tried to draft a practice essay about a time you overcame hardship. She kept deleting the first sentence. "Do you think they mean, like, regular hardship?" she'd asked me the night before. "Or big stuff?" My dad's boots squeaked against the linoleum as he strode in. He looked like a teenager playing dress-up. The bright red life vest hugged his stomach, straps dangling. He had on cargo shorts in the middle of October and flip-flops. The only thing missing was a beer and a bad country song in the background. "Who's ready for lake weekends?" he announced. My daughter's pencil stopped in midair. He grinned and held out the keychain. It had a tiny blue jet ski on it, plastic and shiny, dangling above the table like bait. "Check it out," he said. "Got a killer deal. Man at the shop practically gave it away. You only live once, right?" For a second, I thought he was messing around. My mother came in behind him, wiping her hands on a dish towel, eyes sliding from the life vest to the prep book to my face. "Well," she said, "it's not like that money was doing any good just sitting there." My stomach dropped. "What money?" I asked. She frowned like I'd missed an obvious joke. "The money," she said. "The account, the college fund." Ice slid through my chest. "What did you do?" I asked, my voice quieter than I felt. My dad chuckled. "Relax, Serena. We took what we deserved after housing you two for free for over a month. Food, water, shower, laundry, none of that is cheap. We've been carrying you. It's only fair." I stared at him. "You took all of it?" My voice cracked on the last word. He shrugged, adjusting the buckle on the life vest. "You should be thanking us," he said. "We're the only reason you're not still sleeping on cots." My mother nodded along. "You're acting like we stole. We didn't steal. We just redirected. It's our money too, after everything we've done." I felt my pulse in my ears. My daughter hadn't said anything yet, but her eyes were huge, fixed on the keychain in his hand. "That money was for her college," I said, pointing at her. "For her future. It was the only thing she had left." My dad snorted. "Well, life's not fair, princess," he said, turning his attention to my daughter like he was giving her a life lesson. "Sometimes grown-ups make decisions you don't like. You'll survive." She didn't move, didn't argue. She just stared at him, like she was trying to understand how the man who taught her how to ride a bike could say that and mean it. Her face crumpled, slowly at first. Her mouth trembled. A tear slipped down, then another. She wiped them away with the back of her hand, like she was embarrassed for having them in the first place. I didn't tell her to stop crying. I didn't tell her to be respectful, or calm, or grateful. I walked over, bent down, and took her hand. "Come on," I said, "we're going to pack." I didn't look at my parents. My mother said something about drama behind me. My dad muttered something about ungrateful. I didn't let the words land. I led my daughter up the narrow stairs, past the family photos on the wall that suddenly looked like evidence of someone else's life. In the small guest room we'd been using, I pulled the duffel bags out from under the bed. There wasn't much to pack. A few sets of clothes, some borrowed, socks stuffed into shoes, toothbrushes, hair ties, the damp envelopes we'd salvaged from the flood, still smelling faintly of mildew. One plastic tub with what was left of our past, water-warped photos, a few charred pages from an old sketchbook, the laminated bookmark from my husband's funeral. My daughter moved mechanically, folding her t-shirts, placing them carefully in the bag like this was just another drill. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Away," I said. "Somewhere better." "Is that allowed?" she whispered. That did something ugly inside me. "It is now," I said. When we zipped the last bag closed, I pulled out my phone. There was one person I never thought I'd text again. Luke, my older brother. We hadn't spoken in years. He'd cut our parents off after a huge argument 5 Christmases ago, the details of which I only ever heard in fragments, because any time I asked, my mother would say, "We're not rehashing his tantrums." I'd thought he was dramatic, ungrateful, cruel. Now I understood. My thumbs hovered over the keyboard for a second. Then I typed, "Can we come?" I stared at the screen until it blurred. 3 dots appeared almost immediately. "Come." That was it. No questions, no history, no what happened. Just an open door. We carried the bags downstairs. My parents were in the living room. The TV was on, turned up too loud. Some game show host yelled about a prize package. My dad had taken off the life vest, but kept the keychain on the coffee table, where it gleamed under the lamplight like a tiny, mocking monument. My mother glanced over, took in the bags, and opened her mouth. I didn't wait to hear whatever came out of it. We walked past them, out of the front door, down the cracked walkway, into the chilly fall air. I didn't slam the door, didn't shout, didn't make a speech. I just left. We took the bus. The ride felt longer than it actually was. My daughter leaned against me, her head heavy on my shoulder, fingers twisted in the strap of her bag. She didn't ask where we were going again. Maybe she trusted me. Maybe she just had nothing left to lose. By the time we got off in front of Luke's building, the sky was dark. The kind of dark that makes every lit window look like an invitation. We were 5 steps from his front door when it opened. He was standing there like he'd heard our footsteps. He looked older than the last time I'd seen him, a little more gray at his temples, new lines at the corners of his eyes. But when he saw my daughter, his whole face softened. She dropped her bag and ran to him like she'd known him her whole life. He knelt down, arms wide, catching her. "It's okay," he said into her hair. "You're okay now." I stood there on the sidewalk, clutching the handle of my duffel, feeling everything I'd been holding together for weeks start to crack. He looked up at me over her shoulder. "Come in," he said. "You two are home now." That night, he and his wife, Lacey, made up a bed for my daughter in the spare room. They found an old lamp with a soft yellow shade and got out extra blankets without making a big deal about it. Lacey handed me a mug of coffee so strong it could have revived the dead. No one asked questions. Not until morning. In the thin gray light of dawn, in a kitchen that smelled like coffee and toast instead of resentment, Luke finally sat down across from me. "How much did they take?" he asked. My voice shook when I answered. 15,000. He nodded once. "Okay," he said, "I know a lawyer." By the time my parents walked into their kitchen and realized we were gone, by the time my dad looked at the empty table where my daughter used to sit with her prep books, a formal letter from Beth, Luke's lawyer, was already on its way to their mailbox. And the jet ski? That was just the receipt. The real bill was about to land. The first night at Luke's, I didn't really sleep. My body was horizontal, my eyes were closed, but my mind stayed upright and wired. All adrenaline and images of rushing water, my parents' kitchen, my dad's hands on that stupid keychain. My daughter, though, slept like she'd been unplugged. She'd curled up on the makeshift bed Lacey and Luke put together for her. Fresh sheets, 2 pillows, a faded comforter with cartoon stars on it from when their boys were younger. She'd clutched one of my nephew's stuffed animals to her chest like a life raft. Within minutes, her breathing slowed into the even rhythm I hadn't heard since before the flood. I lay on the couch in the living room, staring at the ceiling fan turning lazily overhead, listening to the house. Not my parents' house, where every step was monitored and every breath felt like an imposition. This house breathed. Floorboards creaked when the heater kicked on. Someone snored down the hall. A fridge door opened and closed. A toilet flushed. It was messy and human and alive. Sometime around dawn, I must have drifted off, because the next thing I knew, sunlight was pushing through the blinds, and the smell of coffee and toast was pulling me into the kitchen. Luke was already there, sitting at the table in a t-shirt and sweatpants, hair a mess, both hands wrapped around a mug that said "World's Okayest Brother." Lacey moved between the stove and the counter with easy efficiency, flipping pancakes while 3 kids argued over whose turn it was to choose the syrup. My daughter sat at the end of the table in one of Lacey's borrowed shirts, her hair sticking up on one side, blinking sleep out of her eyes. A plate with a pancake shaped vaguely like a heart sat in front of her. When she saw me, her shoulders relaxed. Just a fraction, but I saw it. "Morning," Luke said. "Sit." I sat. My legs were shaky. Lacey slid a mug of coffee in front of me and squeezed my shoulder once before turning back to the stove. No one asked the question right away. They let the kids talk about school and Minecraft and which cereal would be the best if you had to eat only one for the rest of your life. My daughter didn't join in, but she smiled a few times. Small, quick flashes, like she wasn't sure it was allowed. When the kids finally ran off down the hall to fight over who got the blue controller, the kitchen exhaled. Luke leaned back in his chair, studying me. "How much?" he asked. His voice was calm, not dramatic, not pitying, just steady. 15, I said, all of it. His jaw flexed just once. "They emptied the account?" I nodded. "They said it was reimbursement for housing us, feeding us, washing our clothes." He let out a breath that sounded like it had been building for years. "Of course they did." He stood, grabbed his phone off the counter, and scrolled. "I'm calling Beth," he said. "Who's Beth?" I asked. "Friend of mine, lawyer." He looked at me. "She helped me when I left." Left. It was the first time he'd mentioned the explosion. The Christmas where he'd stormed out and never come back. The holiday my parents rewrote as the year Luke abandoned us. I'd believe them. "You don't have to do this," I said quietly. I needed to get out. I'm not trying to start a war." "This isn't a war," he said. "This is a bill." He hit the call button and put the phone to his ear. "Hey, it's Luke," he said when she picked up. "I've got something for you. My parents did what we always knew they were capable of, and this time my sister's ready to fight back." He paused, listened, then nodded. "Yeah, we can meet this afternoon." He looked at me. "You free at 2?" "As free as homelessness allows," I said, the words tasting bitter. He gave me a look. "You're not homeless," he said. "You're here." Beth was not what I expected. I'd pictured some older woman in a suit, maybe a grandmotherly vibe with an edge. Instead, she was mid-30s, sharp in a navy blazer, hair pulled back in a no-nonsense knot. Her office smelled like coffee and paper and something faintly citrus. There were no inspirational quotes on the walls, just framed degrees and a potted plant that somehow wasn't dead. She shook my hand once, firmly. "Serena," she said, "I'm sorry for how we're meeting." I sat across from her, hands clenched in my lap. Luke sat beside me, solid as a wall. "Walk me through it," Beth said. "Everything you know. Take your time." I told her about the flood, the shelter, moving in with my parents, the lists on the counter, the overheard freeloading comment, the college fund. The morning my dad swaggered in wearing a life vest, my mother's dismissal, my father's "life's not fair, princess" line. I kept my voice steady until I got to that part. Then it cracked. Beth's expression didn't change. She took notes, asked precise questions. "Whose name is on the college account?" she asked. "Mine," I said. "Only mine." "Did you ever sign any paperwork authorizing your parents to make withdrawals?" "No." "Did you ever verbally grant permission, even once?" "No," I said, louder this time. "I would never." She nodded. "Did the bank contact you at any point to verify a large withdrawal?" "No." Her pen scratched across the pad. "Okay," she said. "Here's what we're looking at. Unauthorized withdrawal, likely misrepresentation at the bank, conversion of funds, and damages." It sounded like another language. I stared at her. "Does that mean there's a chance we can get it back?" She didn't smile. "We're not talking chance. We're talking strategy. You're getting the 15. And based on how they pulled it, you'll probably get more." "More?" I repeated, stunned. "I don't need more. I just want what was hers." "This isn't about what you need," she said. "It's about what they did and what the bank allowed. The 15 is non-negotiable. The damages are what makes them think twice about ever doing something like this again, to you or anyone else." I hadn't realized how tightly I'd been holding my breath until that moment. Something inside me loosened, just a fraction. "First step," Beth said, flipping to a fresh page. "We send a demand letter, formal, clear, with a deadline. They either pay or we escalate." "And if they don't have the money?" I asked, thinking of my mother's endless complaining about bills, my father's patchy work history. Beth's eyes sharpened. "Then their financial reality becomes the least of their problems." Luke let out a low whistle. "Told you," he said to me. "She doesn't play." Back at the house, my daughter was kneeling on the living room rug with my nephews and Lacey, stringing bright plastic beads onto stretchy cord. They were making bracelets, each one a chaotic mix of colors and mismatched letters. "What are you spelling?" I asked, dropping onto the couch. "Nothing," my nephew said. "It's abstract." My daughter smiled, a real one this time, small and shy. "Mine says future," she said, barely above a whisper. My throat tightened. "That's a good word," I said. She kept glancing over her shoulder, like she expected someone to tell her she was making a mess, that beads cost money, that she was using too much string. No one did. Lacey laughed when one of the boys spilled half the tub and they bounced across the floor like confetti. "Guess we're decorating," she said, and started kicking them under the couch with her socked foot. The sound of kids laughing filled the house. It felt foreign and familiar all at once. At my parents' house, every noise had felt like a crime. Here, it sounded like oxygen. The demand letter went out that afternoon. Beth emailed us a copy. 3 pages, single-spaced, polite, and lethal. It outlined the facts, referenced the account, detailed the unauthorized withdrawal, and gave my parents a clear deadline to return the full $15,000 plus an initial damages sum or face legal action. By the time my mother realized we were gone, by the time she walked past my daughter's empty chair at their kitchen table, that letter was already inching toward her mailbox. We didn't have to wait long. The next morning, my phone lit up with her name. I almost let it go to voicemail. Then I answered. She skipped hello. "How dare you?" she snapped. "How dare you drag our family name through the mud? We took you in when you had nowhere else to go. We fed you. We housed you. And this is how you repay us? With lawyers?" I held the phone away from my ear as she kept going. "I told your father we shouldn't have helped you. You always make yourself the victim. That money was sitting there doing nothing. We needed it. You owe us. I can't believe you would humiliate us like this over a minor misunderstanding." She paused for breath. "You stole from your granddaughter," I said. It came out calm, flat, just 4 words. There was a beat of silence. Then she hung up. I stared at the blank screen for a moment, feeling strangely empty. When I walked into the kitchen, Luke was leaning against the counter, coffee mug in hand. He raised an eyebrow. "She mad?" he asked. "She says I'm humiliating the family," I said, "and that it was a minor misunderstanding." He snorted. "Yeah, homicide is just a minor argument if you don't look too closely." He slid a folder toward me. "Beth dropped this off," he said. Inside were copies of everything she'd filed. My name, their names, the bank's name, legal terms I didn't fully understand, all wrapped around something I understood all too well. What they did wasn't just cruel. It was wrong. In a way that the world outside our family actually recognized. They didn't stay quiet for long. 2 days later, my father's messages started. Long paragraphs sent late at night, as if anger had yanked him awake and his thumbs couldn't keep up with his thoughts. "You need to stop this nonsense immediately. You're blowing things out of proportion. You're making your mother sick. You're ruining my reputation at the lake." At the end of one particularly wild message, he added a line that made Luke laugh so hard he nearly spilled his coffee. "I will be pressing charges against you for stress." "Is that a thing?" I asked. "It is now," Luke said, "in Dad World." We didn't respond. Beth did. She filed the next set of documents, a formal demand with a payment deadline and a notice that if they failed to return the full amount, we would proceed with litigation, including discovery of bank records and internal communications. No threats, no theatrics, just facts. That night, as if they'd read the legal timestamp and decided their own move had to land now, my mother's car pulled into Luke's driveway. The porch light illuminated her as she got out, holding a plate covered in foil. "Banana bread." Of course. She rang the doorbell 5 times in rapid succession. Luke opened it on the 6th. I stayed in the hallway, out of sight, watching through the narrow window. "Hi," she said, voice overly bright. "I thought I'd bring something. We haven't really had a chance to talk." She held out the plate like it was a holy offering. Luke didn't reach for it. He glanced at it, then at her, and said, "We're not talking about this on the porch. Beth has our statement." Her smile twitched. "Since when do we need lawyers to have a family conversation?" she asked. "Since you stole 15 grand and called it a misunderstanding," he said. Her face hardened. "You are poisoning your sister against us," she hissed. "She's 38, he said. "You poisoned yourselves." They stood there in a standoff for a few seconds. Then Luke stepped back, not to let her in, but to close the door. "Good night, Mom," he said. The door clicked shut. From the window, I watched her stand there, plate in hand, face crumpling. Not with remorse, but with indignation. She turned and walked back to her car slower than she'd come. That night, after the kids were in bed and the house had gone quiet, my daughter padded into the hallway in socks, her hair spilling out of its braid. "Mom," she whispered. "Yeah, baby. Are we ever going back?" "To Grandma and Grandpa's?" I asked. She nodded. "No," I said, "we're not." She paused, processing. For a second, I braced for tears or questions. She just nodded. "Okay." Then she went back to bed. She didn't ask why. I waited until she fell asleep before I went into the bathroom, turned on the fan to drown out any sound, and let myself cry. Not for what we'd lost, but for how close I'd come to letting them steal everything that still mattered. The next morning, Beth called. Her voice was brisk as always, but there was an undercurrent of something else now. Satisfaction, maybe. "Your parents hired a lawyer," she said. He sent over an offer. "An offer?" I asked. "They're willing to return $5,000, she said. "In exchange, you sign a non-disclosure agreement. You agree never to mention this to anyone in the family or to the bank again." I laughed. It sounded harsh in my own ears. "5?" I repeated. "Out of 15? "And your silence," Beth added. Luke, who was at the table sorting Lego pieces into a bin, looked up. "Let me guess," he said. "They want to make sure no one knows they robbed their granddaughter for a jet ski." "Pretty much," Beth said. "I told them no." "You already did?" I asked. "I don't waste time on insulting offers," she said. "We're not negotiating for scraps. We're going to get all of it, and we're going to make sure the people who help them do it feel it too." I hung up and looked around Luke's kitchen. My daughter's college prep books sat on the counter where she'd left them. One was open to a prompt about a time you stood up for what was right. I ran my hand over the page. There are lines you don't cross. They crossed them. Now we were going to see what happened when someone finally pushed back. The first sign that my parents were losing control wasn't the silence. It was the noise. Not their noise, the noise they caused. It started with the missed calls. 3 unknown numbers in a row. A voicemail from a woman I hadn't spoken to since her baby shower. A text from a cousin I only saw at funerals. The pattern was obvious. My mother had started her campaign. She was calling every relative within driving distance, pre-spinning the story before rumors spread. She was framing herself as the victim before the truth had time to put on its shoes. By noon, I got a voicemail from my cousin Melissa, her voice hesitant. "Hi, Serena. Aunt Connie called me. She said some things, and I just want to hear your side. Are you really suing them?" I didn't answer. There was nothing to say to someone who called only after being prompted. But I didn't delete it either. Every message was evidence of the story my mother was building, and how quickly the mask was slipping. That afternoon, Beth filed the motion Luke told me to expect, the one requesting surveillance footage and any internal logs from the bank. If my parents had lied at the counter that day, if the bank manager had bent rules for them, if proper verification had been skipped, it would show up here. Beth didn't say it out loud, but I could tell she was expecting the worst and hoping for it. Corruption made settlements easier. An hour later, she called. "You're going to want to sit down." I sat at the kitchen table, heart in my throat. "The bank responded," she said, "faster than I expected. And Serena, it's worse than I thought." Luke leaned in from across the table. "Worse how?" he asked. "The manager who approved the withdrawal is a personal friend of your father's," she said. "They bypassed the standard two-step authorization process. No documentation, no phone verification, no signature on file, nothing." My stomach dropped. "So he just let them take it?" I whispered. "Yes," Beth said, "because he said, and this is in the transcript he wrote in the notes, that your father had verbal approval from his daughter." I stared at the table, trying to understand how someone could lie so easily, so cleanly. "I've never spoken to him," I said. "Not once. I've never even met him." "I know," Beth said. "That's why this is good. This isn't just a civil case anymore. This is a liability issue for the bank. Potential misconduct, maybe more. They know it, and they're scrambling." Luke let out a low whistle. "Dad really messed up," he said quietly. "Dad," I echoed, though the word felt foreign in my mouth. "We're not just going after them now," Beth said. "The bank is in play, and when institutions are involved, things get interesting." Things did get interesting, in the worst possible ways. 3 days after Beth filed that motion, my father showed up at Luke's workplace. Just walked in through the front door like he had an appointment. Asked the receptionist to speak with him privately. Luke didn't even go to the lobby. He had security escort him out. He called me afterward. "You should have heard him," he said, sounding equal parts angry and appalled. He tried to give the receptionist parenting advice about me. That night, my dad posted on Facebook a long, dramatic, self-pitying monologue about betrayal, about children choosing greed over love, about how he'd always been there for his family, even when they didn't deserve it. He always hinted, never stated outright, that I'd been brainwashed, manipulated, turned against him. And the comments poured in. "You're such a good man, Jim. They don't appreciate you. Kids these days are heartless." I scrolled, numb. But then a private message popped up. "Aunt Laura, tell me what happened. I won't judge, I promise." She was the quiet one, the honest one, the one who had divorced her husband after 20 years and didn't sugarcoat anything. So I told her everything, every word, every detail, every betrayal. She didn't reply. Not for hours. Then, that evening, she commented on my dad's post. 2 words. "You lied." The thread erupted. Family members demanded answers. Cousins messaged me privately. My mother started posting quotes about family values and loyalty. I said nothing. Let them drown in their own noise. But the real turning point? It came from the bank. Beth called me the next morning, her voice brisk. "They're offering settlement," she said. "What kind?" I asked, heart pounding. "Full repayment of the $15,000, she said, plus $10,000 in damages. I nearly dropped the phone. "And that's just the civil side," she continued. "There's more." "More?" I whispered. Beth cleared her throat. "Your father was brought in for questioning." My whole body went cold. "He's not under arrest," she clarified quickly. "But because he signed paperwork stating he had your authorization, and because that authorization didn't exist, this may escalate to criminal charges. And Serena, he wasn't the only one." "The manager too?" Luke asked. "Yes," Beth said. "Apparently he's been bending rules like this for years. Your father's withdrawal was just the first one anyone challenged." "So, this blew everything open," I said. "It did," she replied. "And the bank is desperate to contain the damage. That's why they settled so fast." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. My daughter's future had come back to us, but the cost was higher than I'd imagined. That evening, my mom showed up at Luke's house again. No banana bread, no fake smile, just her. White-knuckled hands, puffy eyes, a trembling voice I'd never heard from her. "Please," she said when Luke answered the door. "We need to talk." Luke blocked the doorway with one arm. "Beth will be in touch," he said. She looked past him, trying to spot me. "Serena, please, we didn't mean—" Luke closed the door before she finished. For the first time in my life, I let someone protect me. Later, when the house quieted, I walked into the living room. My daughter was on the floor with Lacey and the boys, showing them a clapping game she learned in 2nd grade. She was laughing, the real kind, the belly kind, the kind that crinkled her eyes and made her cheeks glow. When she saw me, she beamed. "Mom, watch!" I watched, and something inside me broke. Not in the painful way, in the releasing way. My daughter looked at me and said, as if she'd waited her whole life to say it, "This is what it feels like to have a real family." My throat closed. I smiled anyway. Then I stepped out onto the porch, sat on the steps, and let myself cry silently into my hands. It wasn't grief. It was relief. It was the realization that she finally felt safe. And it was fury at myself for ever letting her feel anything else. By the time the sun rose the next morning, things had already shifted again, and this time, permanently. Beth called at 8:12 a.m., her voice tighter than usual, clipped with restrained satisfaction. "The bank settled," she said. I sat up straight in Luke's guest bed, heart hammering. "Settled? How?" "All of it," she replied. "The full $15,000 refunded immediately, plus $10,000 in damages processed directly to your new account. And that's not all." I pressed the phone harder to my ear. "What else?" "The bank initiated disciplinary action," Beth said. "The manager who approved the withdrawal has been suspended pending investigation. Your father's misconduct triggered an internal audit. This is now bigger than your case." I closed my eyes, the relief almost dizzying. It was done. The money was coming back. Every dollar I'd saved for my daughter. Her dream, her future, had a life again. But Beth's tone didn't soften the way I expected. "There's more," she said. "Your father was brought in for questioning last night. Not arrested, but it's being reviewed as potential financial fraud." My breath caught. "And the manager?" Luke asked, appearing in the doorway. "Likely facing separate charges," Beth said. "Turns out your father wasn't his first exception. Just the first person who fought back." It should have comforted me. It didn't. Because for the first time, I realized something. My father never believed there would be consequences. Not for him, not in his world, not in the universe he thought he controlled. This wasn't just about money. It was about the story he'd built his life around. That he was untouchable. That afternoon, for the first time since everything started, no messages came from my mother. No frantic calls. No guilt-drenched paragraphs. No Bible verses about forgiveness. No family comes first memes. Just quiet. And then, at 7:40 p.m., headlights appeared outside Luke's house. She came alone this time. No banana bread, no foil-covered plate, no props to soften the truth. Just her, standing at the foot of the porch steps, arms wrapped around herself as if the air had turned cold. Luke opened the door before she could knock. "What do you want?" he asked. She didn't try to smile this time, didn't pretend, didn't play innocent. Her voice shook. "I didn't know they'd investigate. I didn't know it would go this far." Luke held the doorframe like he was keeping the house upright. "You didn't know," he said, "because you never thought past yourselves." She flinched. "Can I see Serena?" she whispered. "No," he said. Her chin trembled. "Please." "No," he repeated. And he shut the door. I stood at the end of the hallway, my hand clamped over my mouth. It wasn't victory. It wasn't satisfaction. It was grief, wrapped in relief, wrapped in a terrible understanding. My mother never thought she'd lose her children. She thought we were fixtures, sockets she could plug shame into whenever she wanted. Now she was standing on someone else's porch who finally told her no. 2 nights later, when the world had quieted again, my daughter crawled into my lap on the couch. She was holding 2 bracelets she'd made, one neon pink, one bright blue. "I made you one," she said, sliding the pink one over my wrist, "and one for Uncle Luke." The beads spelled, "Strong and more than they know." My throat tightened. She leaned into my chest. "Mom?" she whispered. "Yeah, baby. We're not going back, right?" The question didn't hurt. It freed something inside me. "No," I said softly. "We're not." She nodded, resting her head on my shoulder. And for the first time since the flood, since the jet ski, since the life vest and the worksheets and the tears that morning in the kitchen, she looked like a child again, not a survivor. The next day, Beth called again. "This part isn't required," she said, "but you have grounds to sue your parents for emotional distress." "For what they did?" I asked. For what they failed to do, she corrected. For their negligence, for their manipulation, for harming your daughter, for compromising her financial future, for creating an unsafe living environment. You can put all of it in writing. Do you think it's worth it? I whispered. That depends, Beth said. Do you want a judge to read your story? Do you want it documented somewhere permanent? Do you want a record of what happened in black and white with your name on it, not theirs? I took a long breath. Yes, I said, I want that. Then we'll file, she said simply. And we did. My parents' reaction was immediate and strange. Not angry, not defensive, not explosive, but quiet. Eerie quiet. And then came the offerings. It started with a bag of groceries left on the porch. Rice, pasta, canned soup, food they themselves would never eat. Then a tray of cookies, still warm, wrapped in cling film. A store-bought cake with sloppy icing. We love you. A tiny potted plant with a sticky note for her desk. Luke threw all of it away. We're not letting them rewrite the story, he said. But the kids noticed. Aren't those from Grandma? My nephew asked. My daughter didn't answer. She just stepped behind me, hiding half her face. The house felt smaller over the next week. Not because Luke or Lacey did anything wrong. Because grief moves in waves. And one of those waves finally crashed. It's time, Luke said gently one night as we stood on the back porch. You need to start looking for a place. Something for you and her. Something that's yours. I nodded. I know. You can stay as long as you need, he added. But that girl needs space to grow, and you do too. He was right. We had been living in emergency mode for too long. It was time to plan again. We started small. Drive-bys. Slow down for sale signs. Peer across front lawns at crooked fences and peeling paint. Imagine what could be instead of what was. My daughter asked tentative questions. Will we have a backyard? Can I paint my room? Will we get a dog? I don't know, I told her honestly. But we'll have something that's ours. She held on to that word. Ours. One afternoon, we drove past a tiny white house with chipped siding and a mailbox tilted like it had secrets. The yard was patchy. The fence leaned. The curtains were crooked. But my daughter sat forward in her seat, eyes wide. That one, she whispered. It looks like it wants us. I laughed through a tight throat. I hope you're right, I said. We scheduled a viewing. And for the first time in months, hope didn't hurt. As for my parents, they kept circling. Car parked across the street, engine running, never knocking, just watching. Twice, I saw my father sitting alone in the driver's seat, shoulders slumped like the world had finally weighed enough. Once, my mother left a framed photo of me at age 6, missing front teeth, holding a fishing pole, on the porch. The back said, "You were always so bright." I picked it up, held it for a long moment, then set it aside. They weren't evil people. They were just selfish people, entitled people, people who thought their needs were worth more than our pain. No apology changed that, not even the kneeling, not even the tears. Some things can be forgiven. Some things can only be closed. We closed on the house the first week of October. It was smaller than we hoped, older than we expected, and imperfect in every way. But when my daughter stepped into the empty living room, she twirled once, hair spinning out behind her, and said, "This is ours." And for the first time, I believed it. The day we moved into the little white house, the one with the crooked fence and the chipped siding, wasn't glamorous. There were no balloons, no welcome home banners, no Pinterest perfect porch photos. It was just a borrowed truck, 2 plastic bins, 4 duffel bags, my brother's toolbox, and a sense of beginning I hadn't felt since before the flood. Luke installed new locks without asking. Lacey stocked the fridge with basics: milk, eggs, fruit, a frozen pizza for the first night. My daughter ran from room to room like every square foot was a surprise waiting just for her. "This one's my room," she announced proudly after exploring all 3. "It can be," I said. "It is," she corrected, planting her feet like a claim stake. I smiled. We slept on mattresses on the floor that night. My daughter knocked on the wall between our rooms twice before bed, our little code for "I'm okay." After everything, she didn't need reassurance as much as she needed permission to feel safe. For once, she didn't ask, "Can we stay here?" She simply said, "We live here now." And that broke me in the softest way. 2 days after we moved, my parents found out. I still don't know how. Maybe they drove by. Maybe they heard it through someone's cousin's neighbor, the way gossip travels in small towns. Maybe they were still tracking us, emotionally, if not physically. My mother called first. I didn't answer. Her voicemail was congratulatory. Forced, careful, rehearsed. Hi, sweetheart. I heard you got a house. That's wonderful news, really. I'm glad you're moving forward. Moving forward, as if my stepping away from them was some fitness milestone. I deleted it. Then my dad showed up. No phone call, no warning, just his car pulling up to the curb while I was hauling a box of winter clothes inside. He didn't get out at first, just sat there with his hands gripping the steering wheel, staring at the house like he was trying to memorize it. After a full minute, he opened the door and stepped out. He was holding a cardboard box with a broken handle. "Serena," he said, voice quieter than I'd ever heard it. I didn't step closer, didn't invite him past the yard. I just stood on the porch, the distance between us wider than the lawn. "I thought you might want these," he said. He held out the box. Inside were photo albums, heavy, worn, overflowing with childhood moments I hadn't seen in years. Pages stuck together with age. My school photos, my brother's drawings, pictures of me and Luke laughing in front of the old lake house, back when the world felt simpler, before we learned the cost of being in that family. He didn't ask to come in. He didn't apologize. He didn't cry. He just nodded once, set the box on the porch, and walked back to his car. I watched him drive away until the taillights disappeared. When I finally opened the albums later that night, something fluttered out from between the pages. A folded letter. 3 sentences. Handwritten in my father's stiff, blocky scrawl. "I know I failed you. I know I hurt you more than I ever understood. I hope someday you'll let us back in, but I understand if you won't." I folded the letter neatly and slid it into a folder behind the legal documents and settlement papers. I didn't respond. Some words are meant to be read, not answered. A month passed. Our house started to feel lived in, not just occupied. My daughter hung fairy lights in her room. I bought yellow curtains for the kitchen window. Luke built us a shelf out of reclaimed wood. The boys came over after school and tracked mud through the hallway, and I didn't care. Once, I caught my daughter standing in the backyard barefoot, spinning in slow circles with her arms out like she was absorbing sunlight straight into her bones. "This house feels like it's healing," she said. I believed her. We made a home out of something broken. We made comfort out of scraps. We made peace out of nothing. Then came Luke's birthday. Exactly 1 year, almost to the day, after the night my father drained my daughter's college fund. The backyard was full. Kids climbing the trampoline, neighbors chatting near the grill, Lacey arranging cupcakes on a mismatched tray. My daughter wore a sunflower dress and had braided her hair 3 times to get it perfect. She gave Luke a card she'd made out of construction paper. In her crooked, earnest handwriting, it said, "Thank you for giving us a home." Luke blinked a few times too fast when he read it. Then, just as the sun started dipping behind the trees, the side gate creaked open. Everyone fell silent. My parents stepped through, together, hands clasped. Slow, hesitant steps, faces pale and tight, as if they were walking into a courtroom instead of a birthday party. They didn't bring presents, or food, or excuses. They walked straight into the center of the yard and knelt, right there on the grass, in front of everyone. My mom's voice trembled. "I'm sorry," she said. Her breath hitched. "I didn't know how much I hurt her." My dad's eyes were glassy. "You were right," he said to Luke, then to me. "I went too far. I lost myself." No one moved. Not the kids, not Lacey, not the neighbors, not even my daughter, who stood frozen with a cupcake in her hand. Luke walked to them first. He took their hands and helped them stand. "We forgive you," he said softly. Everyone looked at me next. I felt my daughter's small hand slip into mine, warm, steady, trusting. I nodded. But in the quiet of my own chest, I understood something. I wasn't forgiving them. I was letting go of the rope that tied us together. There's a difference. Forgiveness means letting someone back in. Letting go means closing the door gently, but firmly. They wanted redemption. What I gave them was release. We stayed at the party until late. My daughter fell asleep in the car on the way home, her head lolling against the window, her sunflower dress wrinkled, her bracelet blinking pink and blue in the passing streetlights. I carried her inside, tucked her into bed, and smoothed her hair back from her forehead. Her eyes fluttered. "Mom?" she whispered. "Yeah, sweetheart," I murmured. "We're really okay now, right?" I sat on the edge of her bed and took her hand. "Yes," I said, "we are." Because for the first time in a long time, we were.